Hi, and good afternoon, evening, morning, wherever you may be found. Welcome to this webinar with our wonderful presenter, Bonnie Wang, with a partnership of Chung and Sui and Flank. My name is Nora Jones, and I'm the professional development consultant for Chung and Sui, and it's my pleasure to welcome each and every one of you to this wonderful presentation today. I would like to make sure that all of you know that we will be sending you tomorrow or in the next day or two certificates of attendance for the live attendees. Plus, we'll be sending you a recording of this webinar and a follow-up email with a link to that recording and a link to the PDF of Bonnie's presentation. So this presentation, beyond words, has an opportunity for us to take a look at how Bonnie will share with us about building fluency through culture and input. Because there's so much rich environment here, please find on your computer or the device that you're using the place where you can ask questions, the Q&A, question and answer feature. That's a place where you can ask questions about the experiences Bonnie has had, the information that she is providing, ask for clarification. The last 15 minutes of this presentation today will be an opportunity for your questions to be asked. I'll be monitoring those and sharing those. You'll be muted throughout so that we can keep a nice, calm pathway for Bonnie's presentation, but I assure you, your questions will be honored. I'll be monitoring that carefully. If you have any questions about logistics or questions about what is going to be sent, you can use the chat feature for that, or places where Bonnie invites you to use the chat. Chung and Sui is proud to be able to be bringing Asia to the world, bringing excellence in world language education and application for over 45 years, with research and flagship programs that are in use all over the country. This is an extraordinary opportunity for us to continue to share excellence in world language education and studies. We appreciate the fact that you can go to the next one, Bonnie, please. Thank you. We look for Flank's partnership because of its leadership in the United States. Flank is a language immersion, language education, dual language work all throughout the state at the highest level. It's just such a joy for Chung and Sui to be able to partner with Flank to bring Bonnie here today. So thank you, Executive Director Helga Faciano, for both being here today and also for helping to work with, develop, and present this webinar today. You can learn more about Flank and about its work in the world at the URLs that are found on this slide. Now, again, one last time before I introduce Bonnie, please recognize that there is a Q&A feature, a question and answer spot for you to be able to write pedagogical, instructional questions for Bonnie, and I'll be monitoring that as you stay on mute. So, without further ado, I'd like to introduce, it's my joy and honor to introduce my colleague and a beloved educator, Bonnie Wang, upper school Chinese teacher and assistant director of diversity, equity, and engagement at Durham Academy in North Carolina. Named 2019 Teacher of the Year, and she serves on multiple boards, which just demonstrates that professionalism that a true lover of language, culture, and education of young people is all about. She's taught Chinese at UNC Chapel Hill, Princeton and Beijing, and in the Start Talk student programs at the University of Virginia and Winston-Salem University. She's also served as technology specialist and mentor teacher for Start Talk. Her research focuses on proficiency-based language assessment, integrating social justice into world language curricula, and community-based learning, in this case for heritage Chinese learners. She also enjoys sharing innovative approaches to incorporating calligraphy, Tai Chi, and classical poetry. Her research depth, her board experiences, her mentor and guide dedication, her joy and creativity throughout. It's my pleasure, on behalf of Chung and Sui, in partnership with Flank, to turn now to Bonnie Wong to share with us today how instruction can be both accessible and culturally engaging, and to move our instruction both through and beyond words. Bonnie?
Thank you so much, Nora, for your introduction. Hi, everyone. My name is Bonnie Wong, and I'm so excited to be here with you today. We're going to explore how we can make language teaching more accessible for our students and more connected to their real living culture. My goal here is to share some practical classroom tested ways to support language learning through comprehensible input. To a lot of you, this is not a new concept, and I will share a lot of experiences and examples that in my classroom, those are very successful. And I'd also love to connect that learning to authentic culture with you throughout my presentation so students don't just learn the word language, they live it. So just a little bit of my working background. I work in a private school called Durham Academy. We're located in between the three universities in North Carolina and in several cities like nearby. We are literally just between UNC Chapel Hill and Duke University. So that's those two major schools, and then the cities around it, including Cary and Raleigh, that supported our enrollment in our school. Right now, we have 1,252 students from pre-K to 12th grade, and almost half of our student bodies they identify as students of color. We just renovated our new branding, so this is our new logo, and of course, whenever they make a new logo, they are making sure there is one logo for my Chinese program. So on this logo, it says Durham Academy on the left side, 德仁学院 Chinese program 中文项目. And if you are interested in just learning more about my classroom pedagogies sharing on the social media, you can find us on Facebook and Instagram. And then we usually share fun activities in the classroom, and a lot of them they can be adapted into teaching non-Chinese programs. So here's our session goals and outcome that I hope that people can learn from this session tonight. We are going to talk about the accessibility through comprehensible input by sharing some strategies. We're going to talk about embedding cultural authenticity by looking at culture in a different lens, in a different way. We're also going to talk about the practical, adaptable classroom activities, even though I will use the examples that I used in my Chinese classroom, but I will talk about how you can adapt it to Spanish or French or other language programs. All right, so a lot of you are not new to this term, comprehensible input, and my teaching background, I have been teaching Chinese for more than 12 years, and from my teaching background, myself, I am an ESL. I learn English as a second language. I'm working in my second language. I'm living the life in my second language. And I'm learning other languages slowly after I became adults, which gets so much harder. So and I always share with my students that you are at your best capacity right now. Your brain is the smartest when you are trying to learn a language at this time. So utilize it, take advantage of your smart brain at this time. You will remember everything you're learning. Well, that's not true. They're not going to remember everything that they're learning, but they are learning much faster than a person like me trying to learn a newer language when I am very old, right? So why do so many students think learning Chinese is too hard? And one of the reason is because Chinese language is totally different system compared to Romancist languages such as Spanish, Spanish, French, and Italian and German, right? And I'm learning Korean on my own. That's why the word Korean just burst out. That was funny. But when we are looking at some languages like Chinese and Japanese and Korean and Arabic, those languages, we have a very specific system that we look at the world differently. So it's not only about the language, it's also about the cultural perspectives. And once students start learning a language that is so different from what they're used to and what they're exposed to every single day, they will see the world differently. The world will be very different than before they started taking those languages. And of course, I am also admiring all the work that our Spanish and French and Latin teachers are working towards our students, because every student should take another language. Every student should and they can learn another language. So we will talk about how to make Chinese learning accessible, since this is so difficult for many students who are not used to reading and writing in a pictographic system that is not connected phonetically to the writing, um, to the listening, right? To the listening and speaking. And even the listening and speaking, there are Chinese is a tonal language. There are different tones that will play in the role that if you are speaking in different tones of the same syllable, it's going to give you a different meaning because it connects to a different character. It connects to a different word. And that's adding on to everything that we are teaching every day. But still, we can do a lot of comprehensible input, because we are building on what students already know. And before students come into my classroom, they know like ni hao, like everyone knows ni hao. And nowadays, because of John Cena, everyone knows 早上好, 我喜欢冰淇淋, and those little phrases. But those are not their creative output, right? Those are the stuff that they heard over and over on TikTok, on Instagram, on their social media. They have no idea what they mean, but that's what they know. Based on that, we're building on stuff, right? You talk about you like ice cream, and let's talk about other iced tea, ice food, right? Ice fridge. Let's talk about other food that you like that has the similar structure with the writing. Let's talk about some other food that has liquid in it, because they will share the part with the word ice cream. So we build on that. So we know what students already understood, and then we build on that to give them more comprehensible input, but also culturally rich. I'm putting this quote there because that's just from Dr. Krushen, and he's the OG of the comprehensible input, right? And then people are used to it already. So earlier I talked about we are engaging students with what they already know, and we are promoting a stronger acquisition by low effective filter to make the messages understandable without watering them down, without asking them to do very harsh memorization, very intense, hard memorization. By doing so, we can add visuals, we can add a lot of gestures, and at the lower level, we can do a lot of TPR. The higher level, of course, you can add the storytelling. I just found doing the TPRS in a higher level Chinese classroom gives gives more challenges for students who have struggles with either system. So I have a lot of students who are better at listening and speaking compared to their reading and writing skills, and the other group of students, they're the other way. They're more interested in just writing down the characters. They are really good at the details, and they're very visual people. And when they're reading the Chinese passages, they can really dig themselves into it and get all the meanings. But at the same time, they don't really like the synchronized talking, because that way they need to activate their auditory system. But in being in a Chinese program, you have to activate all the system. You have to be visual, you have to be auditory learners, and you also have to understand the culture, and to be flexible enough to learn to acquire those measure words and those different ways of saying things, different dialects, different accents. It's just a part of the learning style. And when we are giving students those, a lot of them we can scaffold it, because be getting the pushing students from 0 to 1 is already hard, and pushing students from 0 to 1 in a Chinese classroom is even harder, because sometimes half of them are getting there, but the other half they still need so much more time working those characters out. They still need those time to get familiar with the different tones and then to be able to produce them. That means we need to give them a lot of repetition, right? Especially if we are teaching a structure, we need to give a meaningful context to be able to ask the students to do those structure. So I'm here to give you an example. This is a very common structure that we start teaching at the novice mid to novice high level. The meaning of this structure is it means you are using something to do something. So it often used when you are talking about you're using an eating utensil to eat, or you're using a device to study, to work, or you can also use the same structure to say you're using a language to speak, or you're using a language to talk with others. And as you can see in a Chinese grammatical structure, it's very specific. It's not you can apply it to everywhere. Of course, I can translate 用 from Chinese to English. It means to use, but the usage of you to use is different than other languages. We need to be very specific with the whole structures. In that case, in Chinese classroom, we do a lot of contextual clues. So I take some part out and I ask students to add it in, but add it in making a meaningful sentence, right? We are asking each other, what do you use to eat? And that's a very practical question in a Chinese class because they could use chopsticks. They could use a spoon or fork to eat. It won't be a relevant question in a class that is like not a lot of students will use chopsticks to eat, right? Because chopsticks are often used in eating Chinese food. So we can expand this context into, well, when you eat pizza, what do you use, right? I use spoon and fork to eat pizza. When you eat Chinese food, what do you use? I use chopsticks and spoon to eat Chinese food. So it's a basic structure, but you can expand it to a lot of different specific contexts. At the same time, you can show students a photo. You don't have to say those English words at all. You can just give them a photo of a person eating with chopsticks, and they just automatically that's the sentence they will have to say. If they say it in a different way, then that's not using this structure. And in that context, you have to use this structure to explain. Another case is you are taking out other parts of this whole sentence, this frame sentence, right? You're not, instead of taking out the device or eating utensil, you're taking out the verbal phrase and you ask them to give you the sentences to tell you what do they do with the laptop. Do they use their laptop to play video game? Do they use their laptop to do homework, to check a golf game to get on the internet, they can give you a lot of sentences. So in that way, we are encouraging them to speak. We're also encouraging them to talk with each other because you can also create questions for students to ask each other. So then it becomes a interpersonal speaking activity. Another we talked about contextual clues, including the photos. So like one way I make input accessible is to try to use the new vocab to real students' photos. So here on this list of the hobbies, those photos are not from the internet. Those are my students' photos. Every year I have a lot of athletes, and I'm sure everyone sitting here listening to me, you also have athletes, you have students who are good at things that they must have photos of them doing it. At the beginning of the school year, I will collect those photos, and each student can send me like up to 3 photos of different hobbies or different activities. And I have students time to time they told me I don't have any photos of me doing anything. That is not true. So there's always a way to find out the activity that they're doing. If a student really tells you, well, I don't do anything, then you can ask the students in during their free time, take a photo of them studying Chinese then or studying Spanish. Then you have one of the word in this list of hobbies is to practice Spanish or to study French. That becomes like being in your class becomes one of the hobbies, one of the activities, and then they will see themselves in the photo. But sometimes like one year I had five soccer players, and they just sent me all of them. They sent me them playing soccer. That year, I just made a collage with everybody in it, and then I put the whole photo so everyone can see everyone. Um, and so these are just my students, and that's a diver. This student is in the Columbia University diving team, and the we have this student number one that's one of our varsity basketball player, and the one on the next one that's actually I think his brother, and he was in our lacrosse varsity lacrosse team, and the one on the bottom, all of them they graduate. The two students on the bottom they all graduated. The students who were playing volleyball, and then that's everyone just knows that all the girls in that photo. So in that case, students think it's interesting because they are seeing themselves in the photos, and they're motivated to learn about activities of their friends, of their peers. So this is a Quizlet set that we use their images. It's very personal, and they want to learn because they're connected to their lives. So I continue doing so because students also have good feedback with those the contextual clues. Um, in my class, I found that there are a lot of teacher talk instructions are just naturally acquired by students without me having to tell them, without me having to teach them the exact word by word at the very beginning. Of course, in the middle of it, students all learn about it and we talk about it. And students are always like, oh, that's what it meant. I thought it meant that, and that's what it meant. So when that aha moment happened, they can remember forever. I never formally taught um, the phrase "let's start," 开始吧, right? But I always say it, and students pick it up because I use it every day. Every day, we start the class with writing characters for 5 minutes, 5 to 10 minutes, mindfulness writing activity, and then I always with the same open arm gesture. I'm always just open my arm and telling them 开始吧, and and then I look at them. And they look at me and they're, oh, I think that's teacher asked us to do things. And then there's always some people already started, so people will just start. And usually after 2 weeks, they already know what it means. And for those 2 weeks, we don't have classes every single day. We have class every other day. Later, so when we formally learn the sentence final ba, when I said 开始吧, that ba, it means soft suggestion. So when we talk about the meaning, the function of the sentence final particle ba, students recognize it right away. They recognize it immediately because that's their natural language acquisition in action. I do want to talk about more contextual clues by one of the activities that I can show you, and I can show you the structure. And I'm sure a lot of you have already doing this in your class because we always making fun of the Chinese grammar. And then I told my students Chinese grammar um, it's very easy to learn because you are going to learn most of the basic grammar at the novice, high intermediate level. And above the intermediate high level, it's not about grammar, it's all about the vocabulary because on above that level, there's a whole set of formal language that they have to learn, and it's all about the different word choices, different use based on the context. So I know today in our audience, we have a lot of language educators who don't teach Chinese language, but you are teaching a language that grammar you can just teach it for a very long time. There's so many years of grammar you have to teach. So this example of the activity gives you a very good structure of teaching grammar in a context. You have a lot of repetition, even though you don't know what they're doing. But this is from the Go Far with Chinese chapter 6 when we are talking about music instruments. We introduce a lot of Chinese music instrument, and but the whole activity is not only about the instrument, right? Of course, we can get closer to the instrument. We can talk about the instrument. We can describe it. We can describe the color. We can describe the sound, the music style. But that's not the novice level. But at the novice level, earlier I mentioned about this ba as the sentence final particle to suggest softly to the other person. We have a series of pictures with a person and what they are thinking in their mind with a Chinese instrument to connect a whole sentence to answer this question, 怎么办? It means what to do, what am I gonna do with it? And the outcome of this activity is to suggest, is to make a soft suggestion to this person because he's thinking about the Chinese instrument guzheng and he's thinking about I want to buy it, but I don't know where to buy. What should I do? And you're giving suggestions. You should do something. So a similar context will be not thinking about a music instrument, but this guy's thinking about, well, I think Chinese is interesting, but I don't speak it very well. What should I do? So it's all about what should I do, and then you're giving suggestions. So this is a very good example of showing a contextual clue by giving the scaffolding framework for your students. So it's keep repeating, and at the end, you don't need to teach them what does the each of the characters 怎么办 mean because altogether it's a whole phrase is to ask what should I do or what should you do? What should they do? It's in that context. And I'm sure in other language classes you have that, and that is one way you teach comprehensible input because that's based on what students already know, and you're asking them to produce more based on what you're adding that plus one. Also, I think stories and emotions are important. We talked about how my students loved having the teaching materials, having the learning materials so personal, connected to themselves. Stories are powerful. The textbook that we're currently using, they have a short dialogue and narratives that use the new vocabulary in the context, but they also made a whole cartoon story with it. So from beginning to the end. I know some textbooks are doing that. I know some programs are not using any textbook, but think about how you can bring everything to a cohesive story that students are thinking about those characters from beginning to the end. I have students coming in after the summer break, after 1 year, 2 years of learning, and then they come in to ask me, how's so and so going to do in this book? Are they gonna be friends together? Are they going to China? I remember in the past we used a different textbook and students are like, are their relationship going to be more complicated this semester than last semester? So it's like following a K-drama, right? They always think about it and they get motivated and when students follow those characters through those little adventures, the words stick better. And even though like this is from the first chapter, so that's why everything is in English, but it gives students a background of this Lopez family and their adventure. And later on, the you can see this is chapter. So on the very left side, that's chapter one. On the right side of the slides, that's chapter 15. So from the beginning to the end, it's the same people, but at the end they made friends, and then they are promising to see each other the next semester. Um, so again, when we're talking about emotions, right? And I know a lot of teachers will put emojis into their daily teaching. They check in with the students at the beginning of each class, and they use puppies and then cats emojis to ask students how you're doing now, and then students need to pick one of them and explain why. I do that too, and there's an easier way to do that without you have to just search all those docs photos. You can just simply use the emoji. Those are also very straightforward. Um, and my students use emojis all the time because a lot of time when they are start typing in Chinese, they're not sure which characters they need to pick. But I told them it's usually the character that right before the emoji. So if they're typing, let's say plane, 飞机, and then when they're typing, there will be emoji plane show up right after the correct word. So they are very sensitive with the emojis and they're easy to type. So uh, when I was teaching when I was teaching the structure of asking students provide the reason, so you thought this is the chapter that I was teaching the emotions. No, this is actually the part that I was teaching them cause and effect. So we're teaching them the conjunction 因为, it means because. So students need to say 因为 and then followed by a valid reason. But instead of just giving them just random cause asking them to say random things, we put the emojis there, and then we put a valid reason after that. After we teach this, it can become a daily check-in phrase, right? Every day you come in, you tell us how you're feeling and why you're feeling that way. And students, in that way, they're building the ability, the skills to speak longer sentence. There's always a reason for things, right? There's always a reason that you can add things on. There's always an in way you can add it to almost every sentence. And students do have that habit. It's going to be a pre-scaffolded skill for them before they move on to in the future to the advanced level, because they are going to produce paragraph length or discourse length um, productions. So we talked about CI so far, and I hope all those examples can prove that to you that CI is not baby talk. It doesn't equal to baby talk. It's rich, structured, and it has the structured input that all students can process from novice level all the way to the advanced level. Next, we're going to talk about the embedding cultural authenticity. And I know we always teach culture. A class with only language, not culture, doesn't exist. Especially for language as Chinese language, a lot of the language, a lot of the word choice, a lot of the for example, the measure word, the aspect concept of Chinese language of not being a tense language, that we don't have conjugation, we don't have tense, and that is the whole idea why we need to put time at the very beginning of the um, of each sentence. So everything about language is from the culture. That's why when people say things in this way in this certain culture, because um, they are from the culture that they see things differently. That's why their language is their language system is different. And I tell my students all the time, language and culture, they're always intertwined. Like culture really, really matters in a language class. And language is inseparable from the lived experience of the speakers of that language. And I really, really challenge everyone to go beyond holiday and food. I know there are several F's in building a successful program, right? Fun, food, festival, those are just the common 老三样, right? The old traditional three things for a lot of teachers, a lot of Chinese teachers to build their program, because they in their class they bring in food, right? They have fun, they play games, and then they celebrate Lunar New Year. That's a lot of programs are doing nowadays. That's basic, and I want all of us to think about in a world in the current US-China relationship is really intense in the current world, that a lot of our students' background, a lot of our students' identities were not disapproved, but not appreciated as usual as in before. Students really struggle by just only seeing the fun stuff of a culture. Yes, I love my culture. Chinese culture is my culture, but no culture is perfect. When I'm teaching Chinese culture, I'd love to bring the fun stuff to my students, but I also need to address the issues that is happening in my culture, right? My culture is more than 5,000 years old. My culture also has a very long, like rooted, it's also a long culture that um, masculinity is rooted in this culture, and because of the Confucianism, the social order is so strict that you don't want to destroy. You don't want to do anything that disrespect the social order. But at the same time, under that social order, women's social status were not being understood, were not being respected in many times, in many years, in many dynasties. So whenever we are talking about that, we do address that. And I'm not comparing one culture with the other. I'm just seeing that from a macro perspective, that in any time, in any culture, in any part of the history, we will see marginalized groups. They are receiving uh, unequal and inequitable treatment, that we need to think about it, that we need to um, prevent our current and our future history to repeat the same. So think about that, and then we'll talk about the cultural authenticity in my classroom. Um, so of course, when we do talk about cultural authenticity, there's past, there's present, and I want my students to not only looking at the old ancient Chinese cultures, I also want them to look at what is the current Chinese young people, Chinese youth, they are doing. What is trendy in China? Of course, they think that TikTok is trendy, but TikTok in China and TikTok outside of China, there are also two platforms. So what is very popular in the overseas TikTok may be different. Maybe they will not be popular in the TikTok in China. And the younger generation nowadays, they are very globalized. So I want my students to get exposed to that because they can learn a lot about the old fashioned or the old tradition that my people that carried on so many generations. But at the same time, I want my students to also be able to make friends with younger generation, with young people. They need to know what young people like nowadays. I found that the enhanced edition with Go Far with Chinese, they provided very updated real life materials. So those keychains with Chinese phrases that reflects each individual's personal interest. It's a very trendy thing. Will that be still trendy in 5 years? Maybe not, but before it gets out of the popular side, I do want my students to know about it. And on the right side, that is one keychain that I receive as a gift from one of my students who traveled to China in the summer. And then it does also have the good phrasings, good ways of wishing people, the good wishes phrases printed on this keychain. So it is a thing. And I know that's not um, the same popular in some other cultures. So think about what are the popular culture in your target language, in your target culture that you are teaching. There are multiple different um, societies that you're looking at, right? So what is popular in mainland China may be different than what is popular in Taiwan, and what is popular in Shanghai may be different than what is popular in a different city. So when we are bringing those examples to students, we are diversifying their narratives for students to take a look. Um, Live streaming is a very current thing in Chinese economy. Is one of the main um, jobs that young people are looking forward to apply for to join because it spotlight you, and that's also like a current generation. The unit on the shopping of this unit, they introduced this live streaming um, cultural phenomena, and it instantly clicks with the Gen Z, right? Because Gen Z they're watching those live streaming, and then they even shop from TikTok. Right nowadays, when you ask people where's your clothes from, and they will tell you the places that you have no idea. They don't even have a store. And so when my students, when they see those real people in China, they are using Mandarin to shop and sell live on the social media, it feels really relevant and exciting. Of course, we are celebrating festivals, and this is one of the picture that I took last year with our Lunar New Year festival. I know our Francophone classrooms, some teachers are celebrating Mardi Gras, and then our many of our Spanish teachers are organizing Hispanic Heritage Month soon, right? In a month. So those are really good ways for students to get involved, to see the real culture. Sometimes the way that we celebrate here in America is different than how people celebrate in China, but that's okay because that's our own culture. So I think compare the culture here and compare the culture everywhere, and we're making connections. We're not saying that the cultural products in America um, are not authentic. We are seeing that as as an additional authentic culture. When we teach about food, I used a website called Taste Atlas to show dishes from around the world, and we found out like there are more than 100 different ways of dumplings in all over the world and noodles, right? And the students they can use the structures to compare, right? Compare and contrast is one of the skills at the advanced level. That when they use 一样不一样 or 很像, right? One student wrote, I have not had momo, but I heard it's very similar to dumplings. 我没吃过 momo, 可是我听说它和饺子很像. So that's not just vocabulary. They're not talking about Oh, this is Momo. I don't know. It's from Nepal, but instead they're making connections. I have not had it, but I can make connections. I can tell people it looks like it or it tastes like it. And for Chinese language, more than that's higher than intermediate low, intermediate mid level. It's a good practice. For other languages, I think that's an easier comparison at a lower level. And it's a thoughtful personal expression rooted in a cultural understanding. Here I'm showing you those food that I know some of my friends when they first came to America, they refused to eat, right? Some of my friends refused to eat sesame chicken or orange chicken or General Tso's chicken. They're like, that's not Chinese food. And I ordered my second Panda Express 2 weeks ago. I was visiting a school in Norfolk. That's the only restaurant they have. Another option is Subway, and I just had Subway. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna give it a try. It tastes really good. And the first time when I had Panda Express, it didn't taste that good. But then I tried other like Chinese American food. I don't have any problem with Chinese American food. But when we had that unit, I remember I took my heritage Chinese class for a field trip, and then some of my Chinese American students they ordered a sesame chicken. And then one of them, they said, "Oh, Miss Wang really hates sesame chicken." And I said, "I know I don't hate it. I just not, if I have a choice, that won't be my first choice because that's not the food that I grew up with. That's not a food that I'm familiar with. But it's delicious. It's a food that it brings you comfort, it brings you joy. Then you should order it. I have no problem." And then we started talking about just being a Chinese American, right? I like nobody should have any problem with your identity, and your identity doesn't have to be picking a side of your mom or dad or their generation and your generation. You're you. You're a unique generation. You have your unique culture. Let Chinese American be an unique cultures by standing up confidently when people are asking you, then who are you? Then are you Chinese or are you American? You are you. You are Chinese American. Sesame chicken is sesame chicken. It's a very delicious food. And Chinese food went all over the world and it became uh, all localized. There is on the bottom left, that's a Korean style Chinese seafood stew with the noodle. In the middle, that's a Japanese style Chinese food with some I think that's egg and shrimps with the rice on the bottom. And on the right side, I think many of you recognize that chifa that's in Peru. That means Chinese restaurant. And actually, that word was brought by the Chinese immigrants going there because the way when we say let's eat, it means 吃吧. It sounds like 吃吧, and it means let's eat. And people hear that a lot, and they associate that with Chinese restaurants. So now all the Chinese restaurants in Peru, they were called chifa. And that's the food, and that's related, that's originated, but then get localized. So that's connected to what I said earlier when we were talking about the culture. Let's not alienize our students' home culture. Let's bring it along because students have the ability to compare and contrast. Students have the ability to identify who they are, and all of them should be proud of who they are. We're getting to the end of my presentation of this webinar. I do want to share the practical strategy. You can take a screenshot or I know Susan and I will uh, share this whole PDF with you, but these are some very practical strategies for you to do more CI with the authentic materials because you are using the authentic materials and facilitate those in the contextual teaching with the comprehensible input. One thing that I really like to do at the beginning of every after we come back from any break, right? I wanted to say at the beginning of the school year, but my students also feel same rusty after they come back after the winter break or spring break or like a long weekend. So I usually start with a picture talk, so get them start speaking, and it's open-ended. Every level can have different ways of framing things depending on how you have how much you have taught so far. You can add in even more um, vocabulary support or even the structural support. So this is just a random photo that I got from the textbook, and at different levels, you can ask them different questions. At the intermediate, low to mid level, you really want students to generate the questions because one of the can-do statements of this level is be able to ask questions, and ask them to ask more WH questions instead of just yes or no questions. At the higher level, they can connect sentences together, so you can ask them more beyond the current time scope. You can ask them, what do you think happened before they sat together? What's gonna happen after? Are they gonna have dinner? And then students should be able to tell a cohesive story, or they're practicing to tell a cohesive story. So here we go. If you haven't started the first day, you can just copy and paste the whole thing to your classroom. And so the top uh, photo collage is from Go Far with Chinese with after the all the hobby, sports, and music unit. So it has watching movie, playing ping pong, buying books or reading books, and then playing guitar. And I usually put them together because students have different interests. They love talking about different things. The picture on the bottom I just generated by ChatGPT. You can do the same thing. So when I put the my prompt in, I just said, give me a photo of two American teenagers spending their summer holiday in Beijing. And then you can just change Beijing to different city that you want them to be a target country. That could be if you want those people to be in a different to have a different racial background, to have a different gender background, you can just make that happen. And then I will go by start. 这是他们的暑假. This is their summer vacation, and at different level, I will ask different things. At the novice mid level, I hope students can at least say, I see friends, I see guitar, I see a camera. I see like a yellow shirt, just basic, very short phrases. And at the word level, that's okay. And then I can add on to it, right? I can ask them to say, what are they doing? 他们在做什么? We're practicing the progressing aspect in that case. At novice high level, I will ask students to practice the whole sentence order because in Chinese, we put the location before the verbal phrase. Students should say, they are in Beijing traveling. So instead of they're traveling in Beijing, and we're practicing those sentence order at the novice high level. And I can also add, how do you think they're feeling? What's the weather that day? At the intermediate level, they should be able to ask questions. And then at the intermediate, mid, or higher levels, they can talk about a whole story. They can make up the whole narrative, and they can even elaborate and even compare. If they do want to talk about their own summer vacation, that's okay. But I stopped asking the question, where did you go this summer or what did you do in the summer to my own students because I acknowledge that not every family have the money and the time and the resource, the access to travel to fancy places every summer, every year, right? We have families who have a very busy summer schedule. They don't have the time. We have families who won't have the financial support to travel so far from them or even like locally. Some students, they just simply spend their summer working or they spend their summer just studying or doing other things. So in that case, for them, it feels embarrassing to share since somebody else just traveled the entire Asia or Europe and those are in my thoughts. So I stop asking those questions. Instead, I'm using the third person's photos to show the summer vacation because I still want students to use the topic of summer vacation in the future, still relevant and useful in their life. So that's it. It's 5:49, and I'd like to just make a pause here, close here, so Nora can take over. Thank you so much for your attention.
I am not taking over, darling. What we're doing here is we're going to take some excellent questions, and we have a variety of questions that touch on big picture and some more details. Are you ready?
Yes.
Okay. One of the first questions is, do you ever use the student's language in class and when? I try to encourage to use target language only, but I give most of my directions in English. What would you like to share?
Mhm. Yes, so a lot of time teachers are, and this is probably like at the lower level, right? So teachers speaking more English. There are certain parts in my class that I will speak only in English. So when it's about my grades, I don't want students get confused. When it is about my classroom policy, I want everybody to be super clear. So in that case, I speak in English. And if I hear right, so the teacher was asking about instructions about a specific activity. In that case, I usually do it in different ways. One of the methods that I tried in the past that worked out very well is I print out, not print it out, I display bilingual instructions on the screen. Um, so students can read. They can read and they may read slow, but that's okay. But I will read it with them. I read it for them so they can hear. They can have that interpretive listening part and the interpretive reading part. But there's also English there. So after that, I know somebody will just only read the English without the Chinese part, but I will point out some Chinese words that they can recognize for them to know, oh, that's a comprehensible input. You know that, right? And that and now it's in a bigger sentence. So we do spend a little bit time at the instructions. Sometimes when we are playing like complicated games, um, sometimes I design those like fun games, but the instructions are so complicated, then we cannot just spend like 15 minutes in the instructions all in Chinese. In that case, I try to reuse the words in Chinese, even though it's not super accurate in an authentic setting. And I'm talking about the novice level. At the higher level, students should know when to use each word in different setting. But at the novice level, my purpose, my goal is to let my student understand. If they can understand the word, even though the word is not so authentic in a Chinese setting, we'll let go. We'll make sure they practice that word. And because they're going to continue learning. When they're at the higher level, they will tell the difference. But at the lower level, I let go some of those words that are more like a student language. It sounds, if I say the same word to my students, they will understand, they will know what to do. But if I say it to my friends in China, they'll be like, why you say it like that? Like nobody say it like that. But at a lower level, that's okay.
That's great. Thank you. And I'm going to combine two questions into one on this one that has to do with what you've just answered. So thank you so much. The question about any more strategies for students to stay in the target language themselves. And I'm combining it with another question here is about how you draw in students who are apparently less interested in speaking and participating.
Yeah, so for students who are not, I'm gonna answer the last one first. For students who are not very interested or who get so nervous of speaking class, just synchronously, they may be the student who needed extra support. Maybe their learning differences doesn't allow them to speak on time within a short time with so much high stress. So in that case, you can supplement them with um, some one-on-one sessions if that is possible. But I understand a lot of us are teaching so many students. You don't have the time with them one-on-one, but um, create the speaking activities or tasks using some online tools. So in our school, we start using Flint this year. That is an AI learning tool. That's an AI learning system, learning management system. In the past, we used to have Flip, but I know that one is gone. But you can try Padlet. Padlet is free. Um, and you can ask students to record it for you when they're at home. The students who are not speaking in class as much, that doesn't mean they're not listen. It doesn't always mean that they're not listening or learning. It means they're learning and their participation channels are just different. They don't prefer to say it in front of everybody. Some students they can't do that. So if that is the case, talk to the students on the side and let the student know, I do want to support you in your speaking. Can we try a different way instead of putting you in the spotlight and presenting to the whole class or having you speak to another person that you don't feel comfortable with? I'm gonna go back to the first one. The first one is to how to support the students in the target language. I think not only the students, I think teachers, we also need to stay in the target language. We need to stay in the target language and the comprehensible language. So I know a lot of teachers who have taught immersion school in the past, and some teachers they switch their teaching, their work environment from immersion teaching to high school or middle school as a just a traditional world language classroom, and then they found out they were speaking Chinese the whole time, a student don't get it because the students were not in that immersive listening environment. They don't have that knowledge in their brain. They don't have that comprehensible input in their vocabulary in their system. So they won't understand you. In that case, I always give my students a list of the daily expressions, useful expressions, or classroom common expressions. So we go over that the first week of school, and then that's always with the students' desks. Whenever they come to school, they see that list, and if they want to say something, the list has it. The list probably have it, and I am always reminding myself I need to use the phrase that is written on their handout so they can understand me, especially at the lower level. Different teachers have different strategies to set those reminders. Some reminders could be, I know some teachers in the past they use a flag of their own country, of the country that they're coming from, and then whenever the teacher put the flag up, that means this is a time we're speaking the target language. Some teachers don't want to make it too political because the national flags may be political to some cultures. Instead, they just put a sign like now let's speak Spanish or now is the Chinese time. So in my classroom, we have a Chinese time, and that is 20 minutes, only Chinese for novice, the zero beginner level one class. At different levels, I add on those minutes to the Chinese only time to remind not only students but me because I'm teaching novice level and my heritage level back to back. So I'm switching my my brain in between. And sometimes I need to get reminded as well. And then everybody get reminded and if and teachers can create um the awarding system with that, right? If you stick to this 20 minutes and everybody get, I don't know, like a red star or a red flower on your notebook, and then once you collect to 10, I don't know, like you redeem for a gift, a candy, right? You give them a candy after they show you 10 of it, or you have your own way of celebrating. Um, in the past, we had those accumulated reading, and I said if the whole class read up to like 50 books, but each of you should read at least like 10 books, but the whole class have to read like 80 books. We'll go out for a hot pot party. And we did because they made it. And then I was also thinking about whether I should make the standard higher or lower depending on the different classes, different year. Yes.
Thank you, Bonnie. Now, I suspect that maybe in a minute and a half, it might be difficult to answer a couple of these, but we do want to at least have you know that folks were asking about balancing, say, an explicit teaching with comprehensible input, use of the textbook with comprehensible input, and about how assessment happens. So you want to give us a real quick summary on that insight? And then I've got, by the way, a little bit more, but just real quick.
Yes. Everything has an assessment. Um, rubrics in my class. So if you are giving assessments, making sure that you have the rubrics shared with students before the assessments, so students know what you're assessing for, and students know where are their goals of reaching those standards. That needs to be really clear. And usually and when we're talking about assessments, so there's formative assessments and summative assessments. So that's a long whole webinar that Nora can give in the future. But I just want to say that with the comprehensible input is really, really helpful for students to have summative speaking assessments in the future because they are so used to just listening and getting all those target language in. They're so used to repeating a lot of words that strengthening their their skills, they were scaffolded and they will be ready for any speaking assessment. For writing assessments, that's going to be another webinar because Chinese assessment will look different than Spanish and French assessments. But I usually give them like real life scenarios for those assessments. So instead of I give them a question, they answer me. I usually give them a scenario. For example, I am an international school head of school, and then you're applying for my school in Beijing. You need to introduce yourself to me. So instead of, oh, what is your name? How old are you? Those are just dry questions that directly taken from the textbook. There's no meaning behind it, but really give students the real life examples as the context of their assessments. Then they tend to be in the mode. They are going to focus and they will give you the best performance that they can.
Thank you, Bonnie, so much. Now, I will warn you, my friend, that there are questions about based on the beauty of your slides, where you get the visuals from, where you got those keychains from, where you got the kinds of approaches where kids can type in a word and the emojis pop up.
Yeah.
But we are at the point where we have honored this hour time frame of your attendees. I do want to remind everyone that you will receive an email with a link to this recording with, thank you, Bonnie, sharing the PDFs of this presentation. And I know that we will have other opportunities to answer those questions and for you to be able to continue to share the excellence that you have and have shared with us today. Thank you so much, Bonnie.
Thank you, Nora. Thank you, everyone. 谢谢大家。
It's been wonderful to have you all here today. If we didn't get to your question, I will be sharing them with Bonnie, so she'll know what kinds of excitement that you were experiencing and the kinds of questions you had about access to some of those tools and recommendations for reading materials and books and the other things that you provided. But on behalf of Chung and Sui and Flank and our partnership, thank you all for being here today. And thanks again, Bonnie.
All right. Have a good evening or have a good afternoon wherever you are. Good luck with the new semester.